Welcome to the Friday at 4 podcast series with your host Charles Luttrell and co-host Steve Kent.
Yeah. So welcome back here to episode 32 or 33
Wow.
of Friday at 4. How about that, right?
32 episodes. Damn, man, we're
Up there.
cooking. We're doing well.
Getting up there. I love it, man. Yeah. So
Yep.
that's what I think's going to be a little interesting. I like this. So I want to hit a topic here that I think you and I would like pretty good. So I want to talk about a little bit like the disconnect between public perception and financial reality. You know, obviously, Chasing Stars is all about, business reviews, looking at your business from the side of, comparing the businesses to what you're finding online through Google, Yelp, and Facebook. You're all about the financial side. You're all about that. Making sure things are in line. Um, what I like about this is that I think um, it's interesting how there could be factors that may be invisible to customers but critical to their long-term success, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind
Very
of
much
interesting,
so.
right? Yeah, yeah. So, reviews focus on, things like service, the vibe, the taste, timing, mainly customer service is a good thing, all that good stuff. And
Yep.
you know, financial side like you, right? That's all about profit margins, right? Debt, cash flow, overhead, right? Growth, financial planning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So,
all a lot of the high level, and we'll get more into this in a second, but it really talks about the plan. Where are you going? How to manage, on a day-to-day plus long term, and then how to grow the business, which
yeah.
ties right back into what you had said. It's the day-to-day, but if you're focused on the day-to-day, how do you look bigger picture?
Yeah, and it's cool how both of our businesses vibe together because, I'm looking at it from the customer experience side, you
Right.
know, the taste, the smells, the atmosphere, and how am I gonna perceive this business, whether it's a restaurant or an arcade or whatever the case may be, a grocery store. And
Yeah.
you're on the backside looking at that financial turmoil, right? I mean, we don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
right?
So
That's a disconnect, right?
when that customer walks in the front door, they're seeing what you see. What they don't see is what I see.
What a
So
great way to
they got you
put it.
coming and going, so you're getting both ways.
Yeah, great. It's a great way to put it, Steve. I really like
It
that.
is, yeah.
They see what I see. You see what it's perfect.
They don't see what I see. But
Yeah,
what I see impacts them whether they're there or not the next day, the next week, the next month. So let's dive into that a little bit because I think it's a great combination of again what you see up front. And I want to hear that first of when they walk in the door, what the average person sees and the perception versus reality. So give
yeah,
us a little bit.
yeah. It's really cool. It's like when you first walk into a business, you're looking at how you're treated, right? From the first time you walk in to the time you leave. So you're looking at, if it's a restaurant, we'll use this example as a restaurant. The host greets you warmly, timely, were you greeted within X amount of seconds? And, were they friendly? Were you seated timely, did you get menus? Were you told your server is going to be there, and it just goes on, right? So it's all about that ambiance, what's the place like, the vibe, the feel, it's a someplace you like to be,
Yep.
and then the food, right? How the food tastes, did it look presentable? Did it taste good? And the cleanliness, right? Was the place clean? There's some of the most important factors of a restaurant, and and last but not least, price for the quality, right? I mean, was it too expensive for the small burger you got, or was it priced well for your meal?
Yep.
And then that's where it ties into segue into you, right? So if I'm sitting down, I'm spending $35 for a meal, is that price right for that owner to really make his financials come out at the end of the day, right? That average check.
Yep. Yep. So when again they walk in, they see this great meal, they sit, they order it, they pay for it, they sit there and eat it, and they leave. But now you sit there and you look at let's just start high level. Let's just start with the price.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not specific into the margins and all those things that a restaurant has. However, things to consider as a business owner, do you know the cost of the food? Do you know what the cost of all your other expenses are? Your salaries, your rent, your equipment, your insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Because that has to figure into what's your price. You could
Yeah.
be serving a great meal, have a packed restaurant, but you're losing money on every meal you're serving. And there's a fine line between profit and gouging the customer and being so overpriced that they're going to go somewhere else for the same for similar food that you can produce. So pricing is a huge deal for businesses, and you have to know where you are.
Yeah.
Um, you have to take and consider your rent. There are, I live in New York. Don't hold it against me. I live in New York. I mean, it's a great place. It's expensive, like a lot of places. But I know a lot of restaurants who had either a small dining facility or it was all takeout. And they were doing really well. And then because they were doing really well and they didn't want to have people lined up out the door, they took over, let's say, the space next to them, pushed out the wall, and now have a seating area. But when you do that, you automatically increased your guaranteed monthly payment called rent and
Right.
utilities. Now,
Right.
and that's great as long as you remain packed. As
Yeah.
soon as you start slowing down, unforeseen weather situations, now your restaurant is not packed. Now you have the expense, but no income.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to say, let the line stay out the door, they'll wait, versus let them be comfortable inside. If they're willing to wait outside, let them wait outside. Keep your expenses low. Again, my perception.
Yeah.
Um, Look at salaries.
Yep.
Minimum wage is going up. There's always that battle between how much do you pay the employee? Because again, it's salary plus tips equals the end pay. And as long as they make at least minimum wage, you can pay them less. But if you want the better wait staff, you got to pay them a little more. Again, things that I see the average person doesn't.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, um, because if you don't plan properly, your cash slowly starts to slip away. My daughter just got a job in the city. I'm not going to tell you the name because this is not a sales pitch video, but she's in the city, Midtown, in a very, very good restaurant. Well, let me rephrase that. It's good, but it's very popular. And she told me the other day they have systems in place to track everything.
Yeah.
They know how much things cost. They know how much food goes on the plate. They know what to price it for. They know whether it's cash versus charge because you got to pay the percentage on back to the credit card company.
Sure.
They
Yeah.
know all those things. They know their profit by the hour, by the
Yep.
day. Their system is such that they can track everything.
Yeah.
But that's the way it has to be. And if
Mhm.
you have that proper system, which is one of the things you help people do, then they know where they are. Is it
Yeah.
profitable? It is not. What dishes are proper? I can't speak. What dishes are profitable? Say that again,
Yeah.
versus not.
Yeah.
That again, that stuff you help with. Um,
And think about that, right? So the feedback we get from when we send people in undercover to, do the work, you get that feedback. Was the price of the meal the value for what you got? So
mm-hmm.
if that meal was $27, did you get $27 worth of food or did you get
Right,
$10 worth of food?
right,
You know,
right.
I mean, it's clearly becoming a battle, especially nowadays with the cost of food. The cost is so it's rising, every day.
Yeah, it is.
And it's
It is.
amazing, right? How we when we go out to eat, we just like, wow, that's whew, it's expensive,
Right.
you know? And
It is.
then also gouging, right? I mean, is it really $27 meal really
Yeah.
worth $27? I mean, should they be charging that or are they just following the masses, right? That's a whole other thing,
Right.
right?
Right.
You know,
If you're willing, as a business owner, if you're willing to give good quality and pack the place, there's got to be a way to gauge, do I charge 27 or do I charge maybe 24? Because people will gravitate towards quality. And in good times, they don't care what they'll pay for it. But in tough times, they do. So if you charge 24 instead of 27, as long as your margins are good, charge the 24 and pack the place.
that service, right? Did I feel like a valued customer
Mhm.
from the time I walked in to the time I left, from the host, server, the
Right,
chef, did the
right.
manager visit my table? You know, to me, I'll pay the expensive meal if I
Mm,
felt like I was valued as a customer in your
correct,
establishment.
correct,
I don't care that I paid $27 for your
right.
chicken nuggets, but did you really make me feel like those
Mhm.
chicken nuggets were laced in gold, right?
Yeah. There's a saying in the sales world, and I'm gonna mess this up, so I'll do the best I can. But people don't remember what you do. They remember how you make them feel.
Yeah, true.
So your point is 100% on. Make
Yeah,
somebody feel good. Make them feel appreciated that you're happy that they came to your restaurant.
right. Yeah,
It is.
yeah,
And people who are happy will order more. They'll
yeah,
potentially order drinks, which is huge margins on the drinks. That's what it is. So if you make them feel welcomed and wanted and thank them, yeah, yeah.
yeah. That's so true. So true. Yeah, I can tell you about an experience I had in a Mexican restaurant some time back in the summer. $18 for a chicken quesadilla, $4 for a drink,
Mm.
$3 for a side of sour cream.
Oof.
Yeah. My visit consisted of I was shown to my table. What do you want to order? Here's your food. Here's your check.
Nothing like a
And you
personal
better
touch.
believe, yeah, and you better believe I will never go back to that restaurant ever again.
Correct.
The $40 meal there was no value to that for me whatsoever.
Right.
$40 is what that cost me between food and tip.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. Wow. And you really don't know. And there's always that issue of tip, don't tip, how much do you tip? But you don't know whether it's the wait person who is having a bad day. That's the way they are all the time. That's the way the management has told them to operate. You don't know,
right.
so it's that tough of, again, do you tip, don't you tip? I
And take that example, right? So the value, right? So customer service obviously lacked,
mm,
right? And the price. So you had two things against them, right? Number one, I didn't feel like a value customer because you didn't really attend to me that well, right? And your price was just astronomical.
mm,
Who pays $18 for a chicken quesadilla?
yeah, yeah.
This is Maryland, not New York.
New York, that would probably be an average quesadilla.
See? Yeah, but
Yeah.
Maryland, oh man.
It, to me, service is, regardless of the business you're in, service is everything.
Yeah,
People have the option to choose what they want, when they want, where they want. And if you're not there in the way they want to receive that service, whatever that means,
right.
and the thing is, you never know what they're looking for. So you always, always, always have to be on the top of your game.
Yeah,
Say
so
hello,
true.
say thank
Yeah.
you. How can I help you? You never know. Because not only do you not know who that person is and what they're going to order, but how do you know that person doesn't know other people? How do you know that person isn't a food critic, is an influencer? Your actions could cost either way, plus or minus, to that restaurant.
Yeah,
So you
absolutely.
always have to be nice.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. So I know we hit on a couple of them as we were talking here, but from your side, what are some of the red flags that you see from this financial health side?
So one of the things, and I mentioned it before, is keep your physical space small enough so you can control the rent. Because you have certain fixed expenses, rent, salaries, and things, and then you have the variable, which is the food and electricity and that stuff. So
Yeah.
that's a red flag.
And then on my
And
side, right, if you look at size, right? So I send somebody on a cover and I send 15 people in, and
mm,
13 to 15 people say your space is too small. I felt confined. It's a problem, right?
that's a
If one
problem.
out of 15 said it, oh, well, okay,
Right,
but
right,
that many, right? Yeah,
right. Now, in that specific situation, I would not just say 15 people. I would do maybe 15 over a month or two, not in a day or a week. Because again, you have to factor in things like the weather,
yep,
seasonality. Okay. Um,
yep,
Another thing that has to look at is from a financial perspective, do you have the right number of staff? Is it costing you too much if you have too many staff?
yeah,
Do you have a key person? So if you have a bartender that everybody loves and everybody comes in specific for the bartender,
yeah,
what if the bartender leaves? How do you
yep,
financially plan? Do you have a backup bartender? Maybe you split, 3 days, 4 days, or a longer
right,
bar. You have two of them. So
right,
how do you do that from a key person perspective?
yep.
What do you
And then on
do?
my side, right, if you look at, let's say you're overstaffed, you got too many waiters and whatever servers going on, or you don't have enough, right?
Right.
We send somebody in. I waited 15 minutes to get to my table, and then I waited 10 minutes for my server, and
Mm,
then my food shows up. So now I'm here for 50 minutes. You're not turning tables fast enough. You're
correct.
not going to be profitable because now you don't
Correct.
have enough employees here to serve the people. And that's a balance, right? Between timing and how
Hmm.
busy you're going to be. So it's a lot, right?
Yeah. Oh, it is. It's
Yeah.
huge. And you don't
Yeah.
necessarily think about this stuff. Then you have the issue of if you have an owner and something happens to the owner, what's the plan
The
to
plan.
bring in another owner? What,
Mhm.
if somebody takes over the business, do they have enough business sense? Do they have enough for that business? So, what's the financial plan to bring in and hire somebody, or steal them from another business? Okay, to bring them in. That happens
Right.
all the time, right? Bring them
Yeah.
in to continue running the business. So it's the continuity piece of owner dies or becomes disabled. Who's running the business? Business closes.
Yeah.
So there's all those financial things. Do they have enough of a cash reserve just in case they hit a slow time, an unexpected expense?
Yeah.
What's your plan to do that?
Yeah.
Um, I know, these days with this economy, things are tough. It goes into some type of reserve fund just in case. In
Mhm.
fact, I just tied up with a couple of lenders who they're commercial lenders, so it's business, so it's inventory, it's another piece of equipment, it's something commercial. And what they're saying when they look to lend business, so if I'm a lender and I look to lend business to you, Chuck, part of what I look for is the lender. I want to look at your financials. How long have you been in business? What's your customer base? Key employees
Business credit.
and credit.
Yeah.
And then what they're more and more looking at now as part of that readiness package, what's the financial backup again if the owner passes away, if the owner gets disabled and can't work?
Yeah.
What's,
Can't
two
can't run
two
the business.
partners, one passes away, How does the other one buy the half of the business that is now gone?
Mhm.
All those things are starting to become more and more, especially in today's economy. People want to know they're getting their money back. So you have
Yeah,
to think of all that stuff.
yeah. It's definitely it's a it's a monster, right? It's definitely a
Yeah.
it's a it's a it's a giant orb of things that just all
It
move
is.
in in cycle. It's
It's
amazing.
it's a lot
Yeah,
to put together, but
yeah,
once it's put together and it starts to work, it's like a machine that just hums along.
yeah,
But it's to get to
yeah.
that point where you have the pricing and the systems and all those things you help with and the financials I can help with to get them into that point of, wow, this is cool stuff. Because
Yeah.
if your business really is humming along and you decide, I'm done, because it's humming, processes are documented for you,
Mhm.
things are
Yeah,
done that you do,
yeah.
things are on the back end that I do. Now you can sell that business for a lot of money and you find yourself on a beach somewhere, which is pretty cool.
Which is pretty cool. Sipping on my ties,
There you go.
right? Well, I tell you, man, this conversation, I'm glad we had this conversation because it's opened my eyes. It's also helped shift, my mentality from not just saying we're relying on reviews
Mm,
for a business, but
right.
it's also looking at the other side that, if you look at one side, what I do on the reviews side, you
Mm,
do the financials. I think what's good about in the middle with us is this public praise over here from the reviews for what I do,
mm,
they don't pay the bills, you know? So I have
correct.
to look at it from the financial side, right? So that's an interesting thing, right?
It is the combination. And
Yeah.
from my experience, and again, you know a lot more about this than I do, but from my experience, you can go on a website and say XYZ restaurant has all these reviews, but you don't know who's writing the reviews.
Yeah.
But to
Are
have
they
somebody,
true?
right, but to have somebody like you with the experience who does that independent review, and you're going to report the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now somebody's going to be able to say, all right, I want to go. I don't want to go.
Yeah.
So to me, that's extremely valuable for somebody to go before they go into a restaurant.
Yeah. And then on your side, financials, right? Think about that. So that gives the owner all this information to look at how they're stacking up versus the financials, right? And I don't know anything about that. It's your line of work that I'm totally clueless on this financial, especially from a business standpoint. But, if you think about what you do, how it ties to what I do,
Hmm.
you have all this data that you can look at now for your financials, right?
Right, right. You need some type of history. You need some type of data to make a decision. Making decisions based on your gut is probably not the ideal way to decide what to do when it comes to your business, financially, service wise, anything. It's probably not the ideal situation. So you want the data.
Yeah.
Data,
So
data doesn't lie.
back in the day when I was just mystery shopping back in 2008 to 2012, I got a reply from a restaurant, and the response was, "Oh, I think I'd rather just stick my head in the sand and think everything is fine. I don't need your service. Thank you."
Wow. Wow.
They got that right. That's what I said. Okay. So
Not
I wonder if they're still open today. I don't have to go back and dig that up and see.
not the best method to go by from my perspective anyway. So
Yeah,
okay.
right. Yeah. So I don't
Wow.
know. It's interesting
Yeah.
how people's mindset, how they think. And it's true, right? There are a lot of people who are scared, right? They
Mm,
fear knowing the truth from some of a business that I have because
yeah.
they don't want to know the reality of what's really happening, right? They're
Right.
scared.
Right.
They like to just keep moving and think things are fine. They don't
Yeah.
want that sticker shock to say, "Oh
Correct.
my, I'm negative $40,000 this month because who knows what his server was
Right.
or the chef was making the burger." two times bigger than it should
Yeah.
have been,
If you
putting extra cheese on it, so my costs have gone up, right?
if you
It
don't
just
know
throwing stuff in.
why, how do you know? How do you know how to
Yeah,
price it? How do you know what's, again, what I said early on? If you have
yeah,
10 items on the menu, not every one of those 10 is being sold in exactly the same quantity. Which are
yeah,
selling best, do more of those. Which are not selling, get them off the menu.
yeah.
In my daughter's, well, it's not her restaurant, but where she works,
Hmm.
every month they do the analysis. Every
Yeah,
month, one main dish goes off the menu and a new one comes on. One
yeah,
part of the bakery or the pastries, one goes off and another one comes on because they
yeah.
look at what's selling and what's not.
You just reminded me what that thought when you said that. I had a friend of mine that works for a food company, and they did that for the restaurants that bought from them. They would
Okay.
sit down and do a menu analysis and look at,
Yep.
price it out, what is the right price,
Mhm.
all should these things be on the menu,
Yeah.
and they really worked with the owners and with the chef to find out what's going to the best bang for their buck with the products. I thought that was a really, really good idea.
There's a show out there. It's kind of sort of in the same vein here. And I forget the guy's name that runs it. I'm sorry, I apologize. The show is called Bar Rescue. It's on one of the pay-per-view channels. I forget. John Taffer is his name. Super guy, been around 20, 30, 40 years. And he goes into struggling bars. Some are pure bar, some are bar plus food. And they do a complete makeover. And part of that whole process is what's selling, what's not. Is it, first of all, the whole thing is it clean and all that stuff. But once you get behind that, it's what's selling, what's not. Is what you're serving what the public wants?
Yeah,
So it's not what you think they want, it's what they want because they're buying or not.
yeah, so true.
Yeah.
Robert Irvine too was another one with his
Right.
show,
Right.
which was
Robert A. Ryan.
an
Yeah.
incredible show.
Oh, I love
I
that show.
loved his show,
Yeah. So did I.
and a lot of value, right? You're helping people out. You're
Mhm.
redoing their restaurant. You having a new, you know, let's bring people back in. Have a
Mhm.
night where everybody's coming in and trying their food out, and how
Yeah.
do you think it went, and getting feedback from it.
Yeah.
It's the
It's a
best
big
way to get
deal.
feedback is from
Absolutely it
customers.
is. Yeah. Yeah.
And unfortunately, businesses can't get the financial feedback like that. They have to rely on a guy like Steve.
They can do some.
Hmm.
They can still figure out at the end of a day,
Hmm.
any day, how much food is left over that's going in the garbage.
Yeah,
Maybe they need to not make as much food
yeah,
wise so you have less left over.
yeah.
Maybe.
You know, and I would like to continue this conversation on, future episodes about different businesses, right? Because I'll be
Yeah,
interested to know your take on like amusement parks,
hmm,
an arcade,
sure.
donut shop,
Yeah,
different things like that. I'm interested on the financial side of, obviously I can do the
yeah,
review side and I can
sure.
spend it all day long about
Right, right.
what we find, what we don't find. But I would love your take on the
Sure.
financial side because I'm curious how that would break down, right? Because we can
Mm,
sit and talk all day about a restaurant because it's
yeah.
easy to talk about, but it's hard to execute.
It's hard to
But
execute. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but I'd be curious to know about other businesses and how does that
Mhm.
play out financial
Yeah,
wise,
yeah, we could do
And
that.
if anybody
Absolutely.
that's yeah, and if anybody that's watching, listening to this, if you have any business other than a restaurant, even if you do have a restaurant, if
Mhm,
if you chime in on your financials or if you got any
mhm,
information that could help us understand it,
mhm.
man,
Right.
comment, talk to us. I'd be interested to know.
Yeah. And to your point, I understand it's difficult for people to open up, certainly to the public. So if you want, Chuck and I can have a one-on-one or a two-on-one or whatever, a smaller private conversation. And then based on what we all discuss, if you then want to come back on the main, you know, episode like we're doing here, then we leave that up to you because we don't want to put you in a position. So if you
Right.
even want that private consultation, let us do that. We'll help you.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Yeah, that's the next thing I was going to say, right? If you want, one-on-one consultation with you or myself,
Mhm.
to cover what we talk about and what we do, man, we're open.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. We're here to help. That's what we do.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
All
Steve,
right.
great conversation. I
Yeah, I think
love
it was
this
good.
episode.
Good episode this week. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Mm.
all of our episodes. I think this by far takes it to the
Yeah.
top because
Yeah.
this really hit home.
Mm.
It's like I said, you've changed my perception on what I do,
Yeah.
to what you do, because not only is it important about the customer service side with reviews,
Mm.
but man, how important it is with financials, right?
It
I
is.
mean, we could be
It
walking
is.
into a restaurant that's closing their doors 2 days from now
And you don't know.
and don't even know.
Right. Right.
But knowing we could probably help them,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yep. All right. Good stuff.
Final thoughts, what you got?
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited to continue the conversation, to help some people. That's what we're all about. Helping,
Yeah.
sharing ideas, um, giving the advice that they may not be hearing from other places because people aren't honest like we are. Telling somebody that everything is rosy when it's not is not a good thing. People
Yeah.
need to hear sometimes things that are not good. This way they have an opportunity to turn it around. If
Right.
they don't have the opportunity, they could be out and not ever understand why.
Yeah. Just like with chasing the stars, right? We're all
Mm.
about looking at what you're finding online versus what we find professionally. Sometimes what we find is you might be a 5-star online, but I
Mm.
might find you a 3 or a 4-star because there's some things that happened.
Right.
And I try very diligently to reach out to the owner, reach out to
Mm.
someone to tell them what I found.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm unsuccessful at that. And, it's part of what I do.
Hmm.
It's not always roses, you
Right.
know?
Right. But
So
again, honesty, while it may hurt, it's the best for the business owner.
you
They can
got
do
it.
what they want with it. It's their choice. It's their business. But
Yep.
again, they have to sometimes hear an independent perspective.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep.
Another great Friday at 4 episode, Steve. Appreciate you,
Absolutely.
man.
Yeah, you
You
too.
know, it's
You too.
Friday at 4 because
It's 4 o'clock somewhere.
we're close somewhere. Man, enjoy the
Perfect.
rest of the evening.
You
Enjoy
too.
the weekend, and we'll talk soon, buddy.
You got it. Thanks, Chuck. Take care.
Yes, sir. Take
All right.
care. Take care,
You got it.
everybody.
Take care. Bye.
You've been watching the Friday at 4 podcast series with your host Charles Luttrell and co-host Steve Kent. Thanks for watching.